Advocate Bartoy.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. This is the first time that we as the NPA are appearing before this committee, and we welcome the opportunity to do so. At the outset, let me thank the Chair for the very useful guidance that was provided in terms of how we proceed with this presentation. It's the first time we've received such guidance. We found it very useful. And, I think it reflects positively in terms of the engagement with this committee moving forward. I'm joined by senior colleagues who have introduced themselves, and they will contribute to various aspects of this presentation. But before I call upon them to present, given that it is the first time that we appear before this committee, I will make a few introductory remarks on the work that we are trying to do so that it contextualizes the environment and the work that we are doing with regard to the SIU matters. I'm not going to go into detail about the constitutional mandate of the NPA and the different business units because this has been provided separately to the committee. If we can move to slide 3, please. Thank you. I just want to, as I said, very briefly locate the work that we have done with regard to the SIU referrals. And I think just maybe to say it very briefly, as you've heard from the SIU, I think it was perhaps a design flaw that at the time, and I think the SIU at the time was established, the DSO was still part of the NPA at that time. And so there were referrals to the NPA for the DSO to investigate. But moving on, once the DSO was shut down, that's the Directorate of Special Operations or the Scorpions, the NPA didn't have an investigative capacity until the IDAC was recently set up. So the SIU referring to the NPA, where, you heard the SIU say, there's prima facie level of evidence. We still needed to refer it to the DPCI to ensure that it meets the criminal standard before we enroll, and that is reasonable prospects of a successful prosecution. So I think, moving forward, that's something that will have to be looked at. But now, of course, the SIU does work closely with the IDAC in the NPA that does have criminal investigative powers as well. And so, we have, as an NPA, we've really been severely impacted, like many of my colleagues, by state capture. We've been effectively rebuilding for, effectively 3.5 years, if you consider when the full leadership actually was in place in the NPA and post-COVID. So it's really from about 2021 March that we have really been able to start with the rebuilding process. And so we've adopted a number of key strategic initiatives in order to stabilize the NPA. The leadership has been stabilized. We've increased staff numbers by almost 1,000. There was a serious problem with capacity and capabilities. Capabilities to deal with serious, complex corruption is still a challenge, but we're working on that. So we increased staff by about 1,000, which is around 25%. We've established an Office of Ethics and Accountability in the NPA. To ensure that we have, the highest levels of integrity in the NPA. We also have established an ethics help desk. We have been, as an NPA, we acknowledge that there's been a lot of criticism about, the pace of dealing with state capture and complex corruption matters. We welcome constructive criticism. It helps us to move forward as an organization. And, despite these criticisms, we have made considerable strides in terms of trying to deal with these matters in collaboration with our partners. And so I'm not going to go into any detail, but, as General Labia said, the work of the SIU is a very small fraction of the work that these entities do. And as SCOPA in our first one, I just want to contextualize a little bit. We have many cases in court that involve ex-ministers, various private sector actors, CEOs, CFOs, etc., with regard to key state capture matters. And because state capture relates to 0.01% of our work, but is the one that receives the most attention in the media. So we have enrolled 39 high-profile state capture corruption matters, and Beyond that, almost 700 government officials and over 1,000 private sector individuals have been convicted of corruption working with the DPCI. And now the IDAC, which was made permanent earlier this year, is really the NPA's important arsenal in terms of trying to strengthen our capacity to deal with serious and complex corruption with a prosecution-led model, as opposed to the prosecution-guided model that we work with our colleagues in the DPCI. We've also built innovative partnerships with key private sector actors without compromising our independence in order to, as the General also talked about, to facilitate skills transfer and to hire some of the best legal, forensic, and financial experts in order to deal with our cases. On slide 4, I just want to remind honourable members that prosecutions is one part of our two-pronged strategy to pursue accountability. The other important, critical part is asset recovery. And so we've re-energized the asset forfeiture unit, guided by a rather ambitious strategy and implementation plan to deal with high-profile suspects, by also prioritizing non-conviction-based asset forfeiture, focusing on organized crime, international asset recovery, and an innovative corporate alternate dispute resolution mechanism. This allows companies that are involved in criminality to pay back, but at the same time, importantly, to assist in prosecutions by collaborating with law enforcement and giving us evidence with regard to individuals within the company as well as private sector that can be held accountable in terms of prosecutions. So very briefly, since 1999, which is when the asset forfeiture unit was set up, it has frozen just over 38 billion rands worth of assets. It's confiscated and forfeited 12.8 billion and recovered 11.7 billion, of which 4.89 billion has been paid into the criminal asset recovery account, that is the CARA account, and the NPA asset forfeiture unit is the only entity that contributes into this account. You may have noted that recently about 2.3 billion funds from the CARA account has been used to fund government's response to illicit mining. And of these figures that I've mentioned, almost half of it, 46% of all freezing orders, 37% of confiscations and forfeiture orders, and 44% of all the recoveries since the creation of AFU have been attained in the past 5 years, which is indicative of the new strategy that we are adopting. As I said, state capture deals with one very small aspect of this, but the second crisis we're dealing with, and which our colleagues in the broader SAPS we work with very closely, is the crime crisis. And so, our prosecutors across the country have worked very, very hard in 3,000 murder cases per year, achieving a 77% conviction rate. We have currently 13 very high-profile gang-related matters involving 94 accused across the country, and these are very, very important aspects of the NPA work. Also with sexual and gender-based violence matters, the footprint of the Tutuzela care centers has been expanded from 55 facilities to 64. It was standing at 55 for a number of years because of the lack of funds, but we've increased it by 9 in the past 3 years, working very closely with our various partners in the SAPS, the Department of Health, Social Development, the President's GBV Response Fund, and various NGOs, and particularly with the business sector that has actually funded a lot of the new TCCs and also refurbished a number of them. We have enhanced our collaboration with the SIU, as you've heard from General Motibi, and I think the one thing we really do well with the DPCI as well is our strong collaboration also with the asset forfeiture unit. A number of the figures that I mentioned is through the work of the DPCI unit that the General just spoke about. And so, we have now in the past 3.5 years been really trying to set up a fit-for-purpose NPA. And sadly, institution building is not something that catches the headlines, but it's really important that we leave a fit-for-purpose ethical NPA as we move forward. And so our focus now moving forward is to consolidate on these gains. So just giving that very broad overview, there's a lot of more detail to all of this, but that's not the purpose of our presentation today. So I'm now going to hand over to Advocate de Kock, who is the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, who will take us through the rest of the presentation, and other colleagues that will contribute. And then I'll come back for a few concluding remarks. Advocate de Kock.
Thank you very much, NDPP, and thank you for the opportunity, honourable members and chairperson. I'd like us to go to slide number 8, please, of the presentation, and we will then come back to slide number 6, which is the process flow for referrals of the SIU matters. And I do believe that the committee was particularly interested in that issue. So how does this referral process work to NPA and to DPCI? But on...
Sorry, Chair, just so that we're not, just to mention, we have a number of slides, but we will not be going in detail with all of them. We will skip through some of the slides. You know, we don't have a separate presentation, but it is a number of slides, but we won't go through all of them. Thank you.
So on slide number 8...
Sorry, let me just see, this is the 60-page presentation in total, right? Or is it... I just want to be... It is.
55,
okay.
Thereabouts.
Just for the members to get a sense. Okay, all right.
It is one
we will summarize, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, don't rush yourself. We're still in good time. The point I'm making is that there's really lots of slides. Sure.
So on slide number 8, measures to enhance prosecutions. We talk about some of the structural arrangements that we have put in place, which are important when you work as different agencies on investigations, and the prosecuting authority has to prosecute. And so we list some of the issues on the slide. You will see some of the national structures that have been put in place. General Abeya spoke about the MPCOC. It's the National Priority Crimes Operational Committee, and that committee is critical because that is where we at a national level, across law enforcement, are able to focus our work and our resources on priority investigations, which of course leads to our prosecutions. So for example, when we talk about the FATF grey listing, and the cases that we have to manage for the purposes of our international obligations, those matters are also then located in the discussions that we have at the National Priority Operational Committee, including the serious corruption work, and the SIU work is part and parcel of the serious corruption work and serious commercial work. And so what have we done?
Sorry, may I ask,
yes.
if you don't mind, it's a request for you to expand on a particular thing that for you might be familiar and you've said it quickly. So you've spoken about the relationship with grey listing by the Financial Action Task Force. Can you just please expand on that and give a bit more context on where prosecutions become relevant to the grey listing and what the grey listing is?
So thank you very much for that question, Chair. So there is a strategic action item on the action plan that's been developed for South Africa with the FATF. There's an action item that speaks to what they refer to as serious complex money laundering investigations and prosecutions. And then they want to see particular features of that. And so they indicate, in that context, they want to see who are people that are helping the criminals to launder funds, who are professional money launderers, who are professional enablers, and are the cases involving network networks of professionals. So our response as law enforcement has been that we have coordinated ourselves very well. So, and then through that coordination, we have identified collectively all of the serious, complex money laundering investigations and prosecutions that we have in the country. And so this is just but one part of the FATF grey listing issue. The action plan of the FATF speaks to many other parts, including the financial sector and the supervisory role that the financial sector needs to play within our system. And members of the committee will be reminded that the FATF, the whole action plan, is really about strengthening our response to dealing with money laundering as a country. It's not just about investigations and prosecutions. Investigations and prosecutions only arise if there's a breach within the regulatory environment, or there's a breach within certain aspects of our financial sector, or offences have been committed, and then the proceeds of those offences are then laundered. And that is where the investigations and prosecutions part come in. And so what I'm trying to indicate in this slide, through the National Priority Crimes Committee that General Beyer has spoken about in his presentation, at the national level we coordinate all our priority work across law enforcement. And so these cases that fall within the FATF context would also feature there. But of course, all other cases involving serious priority crimes, like serious corruption, serious commercial crimes, and including serious organized crime. And so some of our illicit mining cases and other priority offences for the country, including gender-based violence, is all dealt with at a national level. And so we get a bird's eye view as the principals of the agencies. We get a bird's eye view of all the work that we need to do, including how we have to allocate our resources and our budget to be able to do that work. So coming back to the SIU referrals then, we speak about the co-location of investigators and analysts and prosecutors. So when we work on investigations, we make a decision whether or not that investigation should be project managed. And if it is, and if it should be project managed, we try to ensure that our investigators and our prosecutors and all of those involved in the particular investigation are able to work together. And so that's what we mean by co-location. So we create spaces for our people to meet and work together. That's the idea. This helps to speed up the investigations, and it also helps to speed up our processes, where we can get to a decision to prosecute and we can get a case onto a court roll. In the presidency, there is currently an initiative to help us to track the referrals of the SIU so that there can be a more holistic reporting. We do explain in the presentation, and our Special Director Advocate Kanyani will talk to the process flow issue, but this is a very complicated process flow because the SIU works off a proclamation made by the President, and that proclamation may lead to multiple referrals, in fact, and multiple investigations. And this has been recognized through the presidency, and the challenge of then reporting appropriately on the work. And so, and as we speak, there's an initiative to develop an electronic case management system That will help this committee, and it will also help the other committees that have oversight over the work of the police, oversight over the work of the prosecution, like the Justice Portfolio Committee and other committees. So hopefully going into the future, we will have one case management system that helps us to be able to report holistically on all of the work of the SIU. In the slide, we also just explain some of the other.
Sorry, Advocate Tikoko, I just want to ask a housekeeping issue. So everyone goes for bathroom break or whatever. Can I just ask, when we leave, can we just hold the door so that it doesn't bang each time we leave? Yeah. Sorry, Honorable Nondet, I'm not just talking to you because I know people are going to come in and out. So please, if we can just do that.
All right. So, Chair, we have also, over the last 3 years, over the period that the NDPP has referred to, strengthened our capacity and our capability within the prosecution to be able to deal with this work, the priority work I've referred to. So within our Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit and the Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit within the NPA, as the main mandate to prosecute corruption and commercial work. And so in March 2019, we had 259 officials in the unit, 204 legal staff, and we increased that capacity to currently 294 officials and 226 legal staff, meaning prosecutors, as at the end of 2024. And that has been a 14% increase. So the NPA is mindful then of how it needs to allocate its budget towards the priority areas for the country and the priority offences within the country. And this is part of our response, and the numbers indicate that. And of course, as we build the capacity, we also need to build the skills, and we need to then build our capability to be able to do the work. And thus, those partnerships that the NDPP spoke about earlier, sometimes with the private sector, sometimes with other institutions, that also helps us with building our capability to be able to do the work. Chair, I will now hand over to Advocate Kanyani to take us through the process flow slide. It's slide number 6. And she will then also talk a bit more in detail about the work of the SCCU. And of course, she has direct oversight over this work and the way that the SCCU is set up in the country. In each province, we have an office of the SCCU. And in each province, that office is headed up by what we call a regional head. And the bulk of the work for investigations and prosecutions will happen at the provincial level. And each SCCU, with other components of the NPA, reports to a director of public prosecutions. So we often hear about the director of public prosecutions in a province. We got to appreciate that the director of public prosecutions in a province has direct oversight in terms of all prosecutions that happen in a particular province. And that director of public prosecution has to report then to the NDPP and to our national office. And so the way we've structured this SCCU is that there's a special director that's got similar powers to a director of public prosecution in the provinces, but because this is a priority focus area for the NPA, we have special directors when there is a national priority focus area for the NPA, and that special director works very closely with the directors of public prosecutions, but then is also directly involved with that regional component, in this case, the commercial crimes component, directly involved. So she will give us the process flow, and then she'll also explain the casework that they currently have within this SCCU component. Thank you, Advocate Kanyeni.
Thank you. Good morning once more. Before I go into directly to the process flow, I just want to go to slide 5. Thank you. The Advocate Mutibi, when he spoke, he also explained that in terms of their act, in terms of Section 4 of the SIU Act, once there is, during the investigation, they see that there is evidence that points to possible criminality. It's that point then that they have to refer it to the NPA. And this is why there is a need for this criminal referral. But I want to make this point right at the beginning that it is at an early stage where they suspect criminality that they will refer, which means that at that point, the case is not a case that we could then just take to court. And it's for this reason that to get the case for it to be trial ready, we would then need to give it to our DPCI partners for them to investigate and then get the case to a point where we can put up a case in court. So the process flow also speaks to that in terms of how we do that. And so we need to get to the case where it meets the criminal standard for us to be able to enroll. We can go to slide 6 then. So the way it works is that there's two types of referrals. It could either come, if there's a national interest, the referral from the SIU will come to the national office where it comes to the special director, that would be me. Or if it's not national interest, then they would identify in which region it arises, and then it would go to that particular region. Advocate Dikok alluded that we've got a national footprint as the SCCU. So in each division, in each region, there is a regional head who heads up the SCCU. They would be the person that receives the referral from the SIU. They would receive it in a template that we have formulated together with the SIU and the DPCI. The referral will then have the evidence pack. That evidence pack will then be reviewed by the regional head to see if whether there is, it falls within our mandate or not. If it doesn't fall within our mandate, it will then go to the Director of Public Prosecution for further handling. If it does meet our mandate, they would then say, did we receive everything? If not, that would be received from the SIU. And then once that is received, it's entered into a register, an SIU register. It would then at that point be allocated to a prosecutor.
Sorry, may I ask a clarification question? So I don't want us to get too lost down the track. So you mentioned cases where national interest is involved or something. Can you just explain that, one? Secondly, please explain what you mean by it falls outside our mandate, because to us, you're all prosecutors. So what does this mean?
Yes. So in terms of the mandates, when I say outside the mandate, I mean outside the SCCU mandate. When I say it goes to the DPP, it would be, for instance, where it's not complex commercial crime, where it's not complex corruption. That would then, it's still our mandate. So it's still the NPA mandate, but not the SCCU mandate. So it would go to the Director of Public Prosecution that Advocate Dikok alluded to. So it doesn't get lost in the system.
National interest.
The national interest. So in some cases, it's very clear that the offenses happened in a specific municipality in Limpopo. Then that would go directly to Limpopo, regional head of the SCCU. In certain instances, the offenses would be such that they span through different jurisdictions. And so this is why I said it would be a national interest and not a regional interest. Then it would come to the head office, then it would determine which region would be best suited and the approach thereof. So that's just the distinction there. Okay, where was I? So the clerk will then register the case to say, and then you would get a unique reference number. We would then acknowledge to the SIU to say we have received the referral. We use the prosecutor-guided methodology, where from the beginning, when the case is allocated to an advocate, to a prosecutor, they would then plan together with the police counterpart, and a case plan would be crafted. We say you get a case from cradle to grave. So if you get a case, you start it from investigation. You build it up with your investigator, make a decision to prosecute, it gets enrolled. If there is any appeal to the High Court, that advocate will take it through to the High Court. If it goes to the SCA, so cradle to grave throughout the whole value chain. So if once then the advocate is appointed, and also then it goes to the police, we refer it to the DPCI. DPCI will also do the same. They would then appoint an investigator. In other cases, there might already be a docket that is opened at that stage when the referral is made, or a docket will then be opened. Then now you have a team, an investigator and a prosecutor. They would sit, they prepare a case plan. In certain instances, there will be preliminary meetings that happen together with the SIU before the formal case plan is done. Once that is done, the matter will then be allocated a case, as I said, with the police. A decision would be made. So there would be back and forth, investigations would be completed, all the necessary things would be done. Once that matter is ripe, then a decision will be made, whether to prosecute or not to prosecute. If it's not to prosecute, then that's the end of the matter. If the decision is made to prosecute, then it would be enrolled in court, and it go through all the entire process in court. In other instances, the case might be one that falls within the mandate of IDEC, and then that process will be similar in the sense that it will be declared, and then it will then go through the same value chain. Okay, so I hope that explains the value chain in terms of how it works. I'm going to go to slide 19. 18. Okay, so yeah, slide 19. Okay. No, he's controlling the thing. Okay, this is just a summary. I'll just speak to that slide then. This is just a summary. We've put in from the register that I referred to. We're able to pull in information from 2019, and that's those are the total numbers. I think I need to explain that you will see that our numbers, the numbers of the SIU and the numbers of the DPCI, all differ. This is because of two main things. One is that we're not reporting for the same period, but also the way the information is captured. So in the slide where we've put in the tracking of complexity of tracking progress, I try and explain that here, yes. So in one proclamation, there'd be one proclamation. So the state president would issue one proclamation. It would be one project for the SIU, and they investigate. As and when they identify criminality, they report. So the number of referrals in one proclamation, for instance, this is a live example in the Department of Rural Development. It was one proclamation, one project. There were 51 referrals received in total relating to this one proclamation. And it related only to 3 matters and 3 properties. In this case, there were 17 suspects that were involved, 3 of which are companies. But in the end, out of these 51 referrals, for us, for the police, there was 1 criminal docket. And for us, there was 1 criminal court case. So most of the referrals would be, as I said, it's a suspicion. They see some evidence pointing to criminality, but then that would not translate to it being a criminal case in court with someone. So that explains also the discrepancy with the numbers in terms of why there would be so many referrals and yet so little prosecutions. So I just want to put that in context so that the members can understand that it's not a one referral, one case, one docket. Yes. All right, we can move.
Sorry, can I just ask, because this is important. So I'm going to share with you my understanding of what you're saying, and Advocate Motibi is here, and the understanding is a bit hazy. So please help me. So when, in fact, let me ask Advocate Motibi first. So do you refer individuals separately, or you refer, when you do your counting, you refer all the individuals and companies under one proclamation as one? How do you do it out of an investigation?
No, thanks for that question, Honorable Chair. And it does happen that in one proclamation, there's various focus areas. Right? And in one focus area, you may find that there's more than one individual involved, say more than one company. So in that case, if we find that all of these individuals, there's evidence pointing that they committed a criminal offense with regard to that focus area, then our referral would say, this is the focus area we're investigating, and we believe that there's evidence pointing to criminal action with respect to individual 1, 2, 3, company 1, 2, 3, in one referral. It does happen that there's one individual, one company referrals, depending on the investigation's evidence. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, let me take this further then. So in other words, when the referrals get to the, I'm trying to get to the point where the number drops. So let me give a scenario. And the scenario is that 5 members of the committee, and I hope it never happens, but let's say 5 members of the committee, you know, in the view of the Special Investigating Unit, have committed criminal acts which warrant a criminal action, basically, which is not your remit, it's the remit of the NPA. When you report here to Parliament, do you say you've made 1 referral or 5? That's where it gets to. I want to get there.
Thanks for that question, Chair. In that case, I suppose we become explicit and say it's 1 referral with in case where it includes several individuals and several companies in 1 referral letter. We count referral letters that we've sent, indicating individuals or companies or individuals. Thanks.
Okay.